Peace everyone, Unmasked Out here and welcome back again for another live stream tutorial. So today I will be drawing blonde hair. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with the tools that I'm going to be using. Here on the screen now you'll see the color palette that I'm going to be starting with. Now feel free to add more colors to this depending on the kind of shade or the golden blonde that you're going for. But these are the three colors that I'm going to be basically working with to help make the process a bit easier. I'm going to be starting off sketching with my mechanical pencil. I have my colored pencils here. I have a little bit of paint thinner for blending, and that's pretty much it. So let's go ahead and get right into this. So I'm just going to be blocking off basically a basic shape of back of the head. If you downloaded the reference photo, then you already know what this is going to basically look like. It's going to be kind of just a long hair of a girl sitting, and we're just going to start there. And there's going to be a little braid in the back, so I'll show you a few steps on creating that simple braid in order to make it look flowy and good. The technique that I'm going to be using for drawing and coloring the hair is going to be very simplified, very basic. It shouldn't be difficult at all. So you can see that I'm just kind of blocking in some of the broader shapes of what's happening with the hairstyle itself, and kind of getting some of the curves a little bit. So with this hair right here, you can see in the reference photo that it's kind of curving and being twisted a little bit. So I'm just adding those lines in just to remind myself of what the hair is doing in this spot. And it kind of curls out like this and wraps around her head here. Kind of sticks out a little bit. There's just a few texture spots here. And this hair isn't twisting as much as the hair over here. The next thing is the braid. And the way that I'm going to do this, I'm going to draw the general flow of the braid, and it kind of comes down this. It's going to be the center line of the braid. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to build off of this shape right here. And it's gonna feel kind of like a puzzle working with this braid. I'm gonna do one layer at a time. So I'm gonna cross here, and I'm working right on that center line. So you can see I'm going to build this shape. One of the other things I'm going to add is the thickness of the braid. So the center line is where all the crisscrosses are going to happen, and this outer line is going to be the thickness of the braid, because it gets really thin down here at the bottom, and I want to make sure that it tapers off correctly when I'm drawing all of my shapes. And that's really going to help it look like a natural braid, because as you get near the bottom of a braid, it begins to taper. So I'm just going to start building off these shapes here, like so, and just going to work down one at a time, crossing one and then the other. And you can kind of think of these shapes as little hearts that are almost flattened out. So you kind of curve down in the middle there, and then curve right back up like a heart. And there's a lot of different braiding styles. So it's as long as you have the general shape, an idea of what the hair is doing and how it's building, you can get your braid to look quite nice. And you can start to twist it a little bit by layering the sides a bit different and extending one farther than the other, which I'll begin doing here. So I'll extend this one out, and this one will get a little bit smaller. And it's going to make the braid start to twist and give it that kind of realistic kind of flow down towards the bottom. And I'm just using my lines that I used to help guide the shape, the overall shape of the braid. And these pencil sketches are going to be lifted back up using my kneaded eraser, because I don't want the graphite showing up in the final coloring process of this. It will look a little bit muddy. Once I have this sketch down, I'm not going to worry about drawing any other lines. I have the body of the hair laid out quite simply, and then I have this more complex braid that I have to concern myself with. It's kind of a little ponytail here, and then it flows down like this, and it kind of just looks like a flame, kind of an upside down flame. So nothing too fancy there. It's just getting the braid shape, and then we're going to jump right into coloring. And this coloring process is so simple that you don't need to draw any more than what is here. So there is the rough sketch. I'm going to take my kneaded eraser and just kind of mush it into a ball really quick. And I'm just going to gently roll it. I don't want to pick up the lines completely. I still want to know where all my details are at. Just going to lift it up a little bit. And I know where the body of the hair is. I know where the braid's at. I can still see it clearly, but this is going to help when it comes to laying down these light colors. This graphite's not going to smear into the colored pencil so much that it muddies up my hair. So the color that I'm going to start with is the 836 color, and this is the mid-range color for this hair overall. Basically what I'm going to do is just kind of sketch back in some of my lines where I had my graphite, because I want these lines to be visible after blending. And I'm just basically what I'm going to do is color in the entire hair and then blend it out with the paint thinner, the odorless paint thinner. And then I'm going to go back and use my shadow value to block in where the shadow shapes are. Right now, I am not concerning myself whatsoever with strands of hair. There's a few twists, big twists that are happening right here, and I just want to kind of map out the general direction as far as where the hairs are flowing, but I'm not actually drawing any of the strands of hair themselves. So the flow for this part of the head kind of bows around the back like this, and comes down. So you can add these lines and get that flow down for the hair in this area here, and it kind of pinches a little bit right where the ponytail is, but overall just kind of sketching these in a bit. These are not actual strands of hair. This is going to help build up some of the texture in the long run, but not entirely necessary to start coloring in to start drawing individual hairs. So now I'm going to start building up the body of the hair. This is going to just be the outline pretty much. And I'm being pretty soft with my pencil strokes. I want them to be nice and clean and flowy. I don't want to get anything too harsh here. Keep it simple. And then for the bottom, I'm just going to kind of throw some hairs out in a bunch of different directions, but all pretty much vertical, kind of curling them out a little bit. You know, throw a few curls in there a little, just flick it out. Flick out the bottom of the hair a little bit. Again, we're not drawing individual hairs, we're just kind of getting the shape, and down here at the bottom, it's going to blend out, and we'll worry about the little flyaways later on in the process. Right now, we're just building the body of the hair, the entire body of the hair. I'm going to trace this graphite part here for this little ponytail piece, and just color that in a little bit. And now I'm going to go in and I'm going to trace my graphite And I'm going to use a little bit heavier hand because I really want to not lose any of that detail that I drew out. So I'm gonna trace this a bit heavy-handed. I haven't sharpened my pencil, so it's not going to be super sharp or anything, and that's okay. Don't worry about that. Just kind of sketch those shapes in with whatever point on the pencil that you have. It's not entirely important at this part of the process. I developed the process of coloring hair. I tested it out with both digital markers and colored pencils, and I used it in a recent project just a few days ago, and it worked beautifully. The process is so simple, it completely changes the way I think about hair when I'm coloring it now. And it's funny, the concept of how I developed this technique actually came from how I do water. So that is where this idea came from. And essentially the idea is this. I ignore everything about the hair except the body of it and kind of the flow, a little bit of the flow, just a bit of it. And I work in the mid-range color. And the mid-range color is what I refer to the hair color itself. So as you can see, I'm doing blonde hair, and so I have a really nice blonde color that I'm working with. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just sketch in a few of the lines for the overall flow of the hair. After we get done with this kind of base color, it's going to be working in the shadows. And so what I do is I break up the hairs in kind of these 3 stages where I do the mid-range base color, and then from there I do the shadows, and then from there I go back to the mid-range base color, and that's where I block in some of the overlap and flyaways that you get of the lighter hairs that break up the shadows. But up until that point, I'm completely ignoring the fine details of the hair and really just working on coloring it all in. So that's what we're going to do. We're going to color all of this hair in with this color, but what I want you to focus on is the flow of the hair. Get your lines in the right direction. Don't concern yourself with any of the fine details at this point. Just follow the contours of the hair and color the entire thing in, all of it. Don't leave any white spaces. We're going to probably do a couple layers of this color just to make sure that we have the entire hair colored. Don't be afraid to add a little bit of pencil pressure where you're making a few of your detailed curved lines, and you can have a bit of variation in it at this point. This is just the beginning stage. It's very simple. Don't be afraid to throw in some really fun lines. Find those those flyaway chunks that are kind of swirling through the hair, and make sure you accentuate those so that you don't lose them. And we'll just color in the rest of the hair, but make sure that your pencil strokes are in the right direction as far as where the hair is growing and where it's flowing to. It's really going to help in the later process getting the correct textures and everything. So up here, all of this hair is kind of being pulled in around the head, so I want to make sure all of my pencil strokes are going in that same direction. Don't worry about avoiding highlights. Just keep a light touch, a light to medium touch as far as your pencil strokes, and you won't have to worry about avoiding highlights. We're going to get to the highlights. One of the things that I forgot to mention at the beginning, the paper that I'm working on this time, I am not working on Stonehenge Vellum paper. I am working on Strathmore Bristol Smooth, which is a much smoother paper than the Stonehenge, but I really like working on the smooth paper. You keep a light touch. If you're doing a portrait or something like that, I prefer the smooth paper. It just it's a bit harder to work with as far as working in layers. But if you get your colors right in the beginning, the layers aren't nearly as important. So that's what I'm working on this time. I'm barely even referring to my reference photo, keeping this pretty free. And you can see I'm just adding a bunch of lines. Right now it looks pretty cartoony. There's really no realism going on right now. And that's okay. That's okay. Don't be too worried about going through that ugly stage. A lot of artwork goes through the ugly stage, and it takes time to build up those details correctly in order to get that realism. And for this, it's going to take, it shouldn't take too long, but it's going to take some time to get through the ugly stage. Once we get the base color down and we start working in the highlight, or in the shadows, and then we build up our shadows and then we switch back to our base color, you'll be amazed at what the hair looks like so quickly. Now we're going to work in some of the details and just get some of the lines here. You don't want to press too hard because you don't want to erase the details that you've already put into the paper. So just some short pencil strokes and coloring it in. We're pretty much colored in at this point. Now we're just going to go through, basically follow the same pencil strokes. Try to get as much value out of this one color as you can. So you can add a little bit of pressure, go towards those darker areas of the hair. Make sure you get them covered pretty well. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect at this point, so don't stress out too much. Just, you can avoid some of those highlights, but just try to get the most out of this one color. There's no reason to be switching pencils so soon with hair. Once you learn this technique, you can pretty much apply it to any color hair, in which I will be doing. So this week is blonde hair, next week's going to be brown, the week after that's going to be black hair, then it's going to be red hair, and then the week after that I might actually do the multicolored hair for everybody. So that might be another free YouTube tutorial live stream. But for now, we're going to just stick with the basic colors, and then I'll do the rainbow hair color. So you can see I've gotten quite a bit more of the color down, and the hair is taking a bit more shape. You can see I did this side, I didn't do this side. And this side has a bit more shape to it. I'm going to work up here a little bit more. Where the hair gets pretty dark, don't be afraid to kind of add a bit more pressure on your pencil here, because those areas are going to be covered with the darker color anyway, and this just helps kind of soften that and get all the value out of the colors. If you're going to work with 3 colors, you want to maximize the value that you're getting from them. So don't be afraid to press down a little bit harder on this color here. And because we're only doing this first kind of initial layer with this color, the highlight color will go over it. So you don't have to be too fearful about burnishing the piece, especially on this smoother paper, and then not being able to add any highlights. The highlight color will go over it, don't worry. And you can always use the white to really pop out some of those highlights in the final piece. And you can use a bit of black or dark brown in the shadows to really bring out some of those high contrast details. So no worries there. Few more light lines with this color, and what we'll do is switch to the darker, the shadow color. And once we add in a bit of those shadows, then we'll pick up our brush and brush some of the details out and kind of blend the colors together initially. And what it's going to be is pretty much your base layer. It's going to be pretty detailless, but with your base layer. Okay, so now we're switching. We're going to start using the 846. Actually, before I do that, I want to I'm just coloring this braid in, laying down some of the color. This is going to help keep that color there when I blend it out. I just want to add that really quick. Just a light layer. So the 846 now. Now this is where some of the detail work is going to come in. So I'm going to work pretty slowly. I'm going to go from the top and work my way down. So if you look at the top of the head, it's got a pretty dark shadow, like right here. It's got quite a bit of lines going here. So I want to keep my details nice and sharp. So you might have to sharpen this pencil a few times throughout this process. But the top of the head is pretty dark, so we'll just add that shadow up there, and it kind of comes down over here like this. And all of this is pretty dark here where the ponytail is coming in. Just let some of my lines go up like that. Get the top of the head. The top of the head is pretty dark. So just get some lines down there and a few details over here. You don't have to follow your reference photo perfectly. It doesn't make any sense to try that hard. Only thing you have to worry about is making sure that your lines are flowing in the correct direction, and you'll be good from there. In fact, this will also help teach you to draw hair in the long run as well. You know, don't worry if you're struggling to draw the hair. Just take the reference photo and trace it. There's absolutely no reason to struggle with the drawing at this point. We're working on coloring, and coloring is going to teach you how to draw anyway, because you can't trace color. So no matter how well your tracing abilities are, you can never really learn coloring, but you can learn it from the other direction. If you trace and you practice coloring all the time, you can learn to draw. So don't let that idea hold you back. So there's a lot of shadow going on here. So we're just gonna make sure that we follow those unique contours that's happening right here, and just kind of darken it in, just like that. Get some of those lines that are coming out. And this is pretty dark here. Don't be afraid to lay down this color, get those shadows, don't be afraid of it, because you want to establish that lighting. So don't be afraid to lay down this color on this side. This whole part of the head pretty much is shaded, so I'm just going to kind of color it all in, making sure that all my pencil strokes are in the right direction. I'm going to create a nice crisp line here real quick, and then you don't have to color it in completely, because once you blend it out, it's going to be a bit better looking. And then on this side, this is all kind of shaded right there, and this curls in. You kind of get this curled bit here. And because we're working a bit small, you know, some of those really fine details, don't hang up on them. We're working with color, so just if you were to draw this bigger, it'd be a lot easier to get those really fine details. But don't stress about them. If you're working small, it's just going to drive you crazy. If you get your colors in the right place, then the really fine details are going to not really matter all that much. So now I'm going to work on the back side of the braid here. So I'm kind of isolating the braid. I'm lifting it off the head by adding this nice shadow underneath. And it's a pretty stark shadow, so don't be afraid to lay this color down at all. And right underneath where this hairs are coming together, the ponytail kind of pulled back there. So there's the stark shadow, and it kind of goes down. So work on the outside of the braid, bring out those details of the braid. We'll work in the finer details later when after we blend it out. We're not going to try to fit those in and then blend it out, because it's going to get blurry, and the details are quite small. So we're kind of just going to leave it implied as far as the details, the final details. Well, we'll sketch them in a little bit, but there's not much we can do. The drawing's just too small. So that part of the braid is good. We're going to do the same thing on the other side, just kind of trace it a little bit and bring out some of the details. This is going to lift the braid completely off the back of the head and make it look like it's, a bit off the rest of the hair. Now I'm going to go in and start adding some of those shadowed lines and the darker shadowed stuff. So there's a lot right here, and what you're looking for with laying down this color is you're looking for those those kind of crescent moon shapes that just come out of nowhere, and you can see them if you ignore the strands of hair as individual hairs and you look for where everything is kind of dark in general. So you have this whole area here that's kind of dark, and it goes in between these flowy hairs, and the whole area here is dark. We're not drawing individual hairs right now, so don't be afraid to just kind of shade it as a shape. Kind of ignore the fact that you're drawing hair right now. So like this, and then one of the things that you're going to want to look for, you'll want to find some of those stray hairs and start to pick them out. So I kind of have a hair here that's flowing up, and I'm just going to kind of follow it along and block it out. I'm going to block out some of those free-flowing hairs, and this is going to help the final like flyaway hairs stand out and look really nice. So down here it's kind of just a crisscrossed mess, but when we blend this out, it's going to make it pretty smooth, pretty blurry. And then what you'll be able to do is you'll be able to take your highlighted pencil, the 832 is what we're going to use for the yellow highlights. It's kind of a milky off-white yellowish color. I used it in skin a lot, and we're going to use that for the highlight. And you'll be able to color pretty good flyaway lines right over top of a lot of this darker color. So you don't have to concern yourself too much, but it is nice to throw in a few of those flyaways and just kind of block them out a little bit with the shadow color. You can see still there's not a lot of detail going on here, just a bunch of sketched lines as far as the hair goes. So nothing too complex at this point. There's a nice kind of chunk of hair flowing this way, so I'm going to color under it really quick and just block it in. Just kind of get that flow blocked in a little bit more so that it shows up in the final piece. And there's another one that comes across like this. I'm just going to shade under that a little bit. And there's kind of this big shaded area coming right here, and then there's some up here a bit. So you can see that it's starting to add a bit more texture. And we've only worked with two colors so far. only two colors, and it's a pretty golden blonde hair right now. And the color that we worked with is kind of like, you know, not an orange, like a really desaturated orange and a gray. You know, they're not colors that you would generally associate with coloring blonde hair. So it's important to really look at what colors are showing up in reference photos for the, you know, for the blonde hair, the actual colors that you need to use in order to create that blonde hair. And I'm not using any yellow. I mean, the closest yellow that I'm using is the highlight color, and it's pretty desaturated color. It's more of a peach color than yellow. Of course, you can go yellow. You can go more yellow with your blonde hair if you choose to, but if you're going for realistic looking blonde hair, then I can tell you right now that yellow is not going to be the direction you want to go. If you want to go for the, you know, the lighter, brighter blonde hair, you might reach for, you know, a yellowish color, but it's in general it's not going to be very yellow. I would say the yellowest you would probably want to go is maybe a 034 color in Luminance colored pencils. That's the colored pencils that I'm always using and using now, so forgot to mention that at the beginning. Alright, so now we have the base color down, the shadow color. We're going to go ahead and start blending this out with some odorless paint thinner, and I'm using a number 4 round brush, partly because this drawing is a bit smaller. Sorry about that. Hopefully that wasn't on the screen for too long. Still need to get a new camcorder. Okay, so just like always, take your brush and follow your pencil strokes. Follow the same path that the hair is supposed to be taking. You can be a bit liberal with the paint thinner. There's no need to dry your brush off or anything like that. There should not be a whole ton of pencil down. You should be able to blend this out, soften those grainy bits a little bit, and pretty much have all of the white that was originally underneath the hair completely covered. That's what you should have. You should have very, very little white left anywhere in your hairs. And of course, when you get close to the edge, you can go against the grain a little bit and, you know, kind of work that edge in so that it's a smooth edge and it's not all jaggedy and stuff. So in that case, you can break the rule as far as coloring or brushing in the direction of your pencil strokes. But you want to do your best to make sure you're always brushing in the right direction. And we're moving right along with this picture so far. And we haven't even touched the highlight color. We've barely paid any attention to any of the fine details. And the fine details is what's really going to help this hair come to life. Right now, we're just laying out some of the base colors. This is just the base colors. 2 colors, and you can get this, just 2. So this is a really nice look for a hair with just 2 colors, you know? So this look would look really good with cartoon kind of drawings, or just a bit stylized cartoonish type drawing, not going for realism. And it really didn't take all that long. It was 2 colors, a little bit of brushing with paint thinner. And once this starts looking smoother, the hair is going to look so much better. It's going to start looking silky. It's going to start looking pretty shiny. And you can, same way with the pencils, you can work out some of your highlights by avoiding them. So those few whitish parts that you leave in your hair, that will be the highlighted spot. So you can just work away. Don't be afraid to leave some lines in there as well. There's nothing wrong with leaving a little bit of texture. For the most part, these base colors, they can establish quite a bit. With just these two colors, you can establish a lot of value, a lot of color, and a lot of texture really quickly and really early on in the drawing process. Once we finish blending this out with the paint thinner, we're going to go back to our base color. We're going to start building in some texture. We're going to start building in a little bit of texture, a little bit more value. And then after that, we are going to add some of the highlight color just to get some of those highlights established. We want to get some of those highlights established. And then once we do that, we'll blend it out one more time. Or we'll add a little bit of the shadow color. We'll bring in a bit more detail, especially in the braid here. The braid is looking pretty flat right now, and that's because I haven't added any of the details to it. So we'll switch back to the shadow color one more time before blending it out a second time. There's no need to blend after every color, because we can do a lot with just the pencil before using the paint thinner at all. So you can see that the hair is much smoother looking. We got rid of a good portion of the grainy colored pencil texture. There we go. So now I'm going to switch back to the base color, which is the 836, and I'm going to give it a quick sharpen just so I can get some of those details a little bit nicer looking, a little bit better. Having a hard sharp pencil is good for bringing out details. I'm going to just go in, I'm going to add some lines, not even paying any attention to my reference photo at this point, because the base color is going to be very well hidden in the piece. Overall, the highlights will come out much easier and cover up any minor imperfections that you might create with the base color. So just go in, build up some of that texture, follow the lines that you've already created. There's really no use for the reference photo at this point. And just go in, and you'll notice that now that we have those first initial layers of colored pencil laid down and blended out, you'll notice that the paper is much smoother. So you do not have to press hard at all. In fact, you don't want to press hard. You can, I constantly am turning my pencil, because every time I brush it, it gets a little bit flatter. I turn it and it continuously sharpens it. So if you notice me doing that, that is why I do it. It's a good habit to have. You see many artists doing it. It's not only good for keeping the pencil sharp, but it's also really good for your hand, because it breaks up the monotony of moving your hand in the same way, kind of relaxes your hand a bit. So I do it actually more naturally now than just to relax my hand than it is to sharpen the pencil. But the benefit is it does sharpen your pencil. You can be a bit loose with this color, like I mentioned. You can add some of those fun flyaway hairs and just kind of add a bit of texture, especially down here at the bottom. We want to fill this hair up. We want to fill it up and make sure that we're getting, you know, the best bang for our buck here, especially with this color here. Now I do have a few extra colors that I might use. I have a little bit of 407 here just to add some final details. I also have a white pencil and I have a black one just in case. I highly doubt I'll use the black. I've very rarely ever used black in anything. I have like 4 black pencils. I thought it would be similar to paint and I'd go through black a lot, but I almost never use black unless it's for, like, you know, really, really dark, super dark shadows. But that's not really the look we're going for with this hair. So the 407 is a nice deep, rich reddish brown color. I thought it might add a bit of a nice dimension to the hair in the final touch-ups of it. So that's why I have that color, just in case, kind of a backup color. All right, now we're going to switch back to the 846. Also give that a good sharpen as well. We're going to sharpen up some of the shadow parts, bring out some of the details, and we're also going to work with this braid a little bit. Since I just sharpened my pencil, we're going to work with this braid starting off so that we can get some of these details in here. Basically, I'm just going to be adding a bit darker lines and a bit of shadowed texture there, just to help you know, get that shape and bring in some of the texture of the hair getting pulled around and curled and all that stuff that goes on with braids. You know, we've all seen braids, so I need to get some of that texture in there to help sit the hair down into the picture a little bit more, because right now everything has a bunch of texture and then there's just this weird textureless braid popping out of nowhere. So give it some fine details here. And I'm not looking at the reference photo really at all. I know what the details are supposed to look like, so I'm just kind of throwing some in there, and down here at the bottom it really just making some crisscrosses and not really doing anything. That looks a little bit better. And you don't want to be too uniform with your details. You know, there's some random shadows that come across the braids and change things, and you would be a little bit random. So that's another, you know, reason not to try too hard. Yeah, you don't want to try too hard. There's some dark shadows here creating the hair twist, so I'm gonna build that up a little bit, and then here as well. There we go. And now I'm going to start getting some of the other lines down. And now what I'm doing is I'm kind of bringing in some of those loose hairs that are dark and they're just kind of coming across. And I'm not looking at the reference photo. I see where the flow of hair is on my drawing, and so I'm matching my drawing at this point. I'm not matching the reference photo. I'm going based off the flow that I created while drawing this hair. So not too concerned with the reference photo whatsoever at this point. In fact, I'll probably barely even look at it, because I want this to be my hair. Like, I'm taking the style, but the reference photo isn't even blonde hair, it's brown hair. So it's not much help for me at this point. But there is a lot of dark. There's a lot of dark on this side, so we want to make sure that we get that in there. That's one thing. That will help establish the lighting, because the lighting is kind of coming from the right. So that's one reason to look at the reference photo. It's just to remind you that a lot of this here on this side is pretty dark. And don't worry, the highlights will come. The highlights will come. We haven't even touched our third color yet, and look how awesome our hair already looks. There we go. It's looking pretty good. There we go. Just like that. There's a bit of, detail here with the ponytail. We're going to bring this ponytail up off the back of the head a little bit. Just add a little bit more shadow here. There. And then just a few more strands over here. Nothing too fancy. I'm barely even paying attention. I'm just kind of creating some of those flyaways. And then here, add a little bit there. And now we are going to use some of our highlight color. Now, it's pretty dull. My pencil's pretty dull. I'm not going to be working on the fine, like super bright highlights. I'm just going to be building in some of the highlighted areas just to establish the lighting a bit. This color is really not showing up all that much, and that's to be expected. So I'm just, this is going to color in a lot of the white that's left over. I don't want any of that white, so I'm coloring it all in. And then I'm going to blend it out. And I might actually end up using a darker color to just help build the contrast of the hair, because right now the contrast is not too high. But overall, the image that the reference photo, the lighting is not very, what's the word I'm looking for? It's not very contrasted image. It's pretty flat image. So, but I might bring in a little bit of white to help reinforce the lighting and the overall image and make it a bit more contrasted. So now that I have that kind of colored out, and that color was the 832, if I failed to mention that. I'm going to brush it off real quick, get rid of some of the dust. And we're going to start blending it again with the brush. And we're almost done here, not too much farther. Now, since these layers have quite a bit more colored pencil on, you can, not have such a wet brush. You don't need to use nearly as much paint thinner. It's going to smear around quite easy. And you're going to get some brush strokes, which is really great because you're going to start pulling in some of the colors, and they're going to start blending together really nicely, and then you're going to be able to get some of it on the tip of your brush, almost like paint, and you're going to start pulling that pigment around, and it's going to leave streaks, but you want those streaks. You want that texture. So be sure to follow your lines carefully with your brush and grab that texture and just brush it out. When you're coloring hair, one of the things I think people are doing a lot of the time is they kind of feel like using the paint thinner is like the last step. Oh, I have all my pencil down, let me make sure it's all blended together real nicely and stuff like that. But when it comes to hair, the last step should be coloring with colored pencils. It should not be using paint thinner to blend it all out. I mean, obviously there's exceptions to the rule, but in the most general case, you want that lasting texture to be really sharp and clean, and you won't get that with the brush. You're going to blur out those lines. So you want those last final textured details to be done with the pencil itself. just kind of following that flow. You can see the hair is it's silkier on the left side here, getting rid of some of that extra pencil grain. And you can see that in the most general sense, as far as the size of this drawing, the hair is quite real looking, given the size and given the fact that we've only used 3 colors throughout this entire piece. And I don't know how long I've been streaming for, about an hour or so. Coming up on an hour, and already looks this good. If you had more room, so working larger, and you did start to incorporate a bit more dynamic colors into the hair, you could certainly take this semi-realistic hair right here and really just bring it to life entirely. Because it looks pretty good at this point for such a quick and easy drawing. And this is going to be the case with all of the hairs that we do in this series. This is going to be kind of a 5-week series of coloring every color of hair, working in these same exact techniques with 3 colors. All of the initial drawings are going to be done with just 3 colors. All right, so I think that's blended out pretty much as good as it's going to get with those 3 colors. Now what I think I'm going to do, I think I'm going to go ahead with my 407. So I have my 407 here, and I'm gonna just work in really fine details. So I'm gonna work in the dark spots here, and so it's really sharp pencil, light touch. I don't want this color showing up very much. This is just going to bring in a lot of really fine texture, small thin hairs. I'm kind of just helping darken that 846 color that we've been using for the shadows, and I'm using just a light touch. I don't want to have to sharpen this pencil a lot, so that's why I'm not pressing too hard. I'm just kind of slowly drawing really thin lines. And this is one of the benefits that you're going to get with working with this smooth paper. When you're working with the smooth paper, you can your tip of the pencil will stay sharper longer, and it goes on really smooth. I really like working on the smooth paper. You are limited with, you have about 4 layers, 5 maximum on this paper, as opposed to the 6 to 7 layers that I get on the Vellum paper with a bit more tooth, and the 8 to 9 layers that you get with the the watercolor paper. But honestly, if it shouldn't take you that many layers. It really shouldn't. If you're picking the right colors, it shouldn't be taking you more than 5 layers to draw whatever you're trying to draw, color whatever you're trying to color. Now you do have the benefit with being able to add a few more layers to, kind of get some of your shadows just right. I know shadows can be quite difficult, so now I'm working on this braid and adding those teeny tiny little hairs. Help bring out the shape and texture a bit more. just going to kind of basically just kind of lightly drawing the braid all over again, trying to get some of that really fine detail in there, just to help the braid come to life a bit more. And this is one of the reasons that you really can't do this all with 3 colors. The reason I'm limiting these hair tutorials with 3 colors is because I want you to recognize how much you can do with a limited color palette by maximizing the potential for each color. Working with a limited color palette makes you focus more on the necessary techniques to create the texture, to create the the value. You want to maximize the value that you get out of your pencils. You don't need to be switching straight to black just to get shadows and straight to white to get highlights. So hopefully this tutorial series will make that a bit easier to kind of understand and get past. Too many people are using black for shadows. Honestly, if I could, I just take everybody's black pencil and burn them, just to force them to find better ways to create their shadows. Work with a different color. Force yourself to do it. And it will pay off in the long run. I don't think that I'm going to add a bit more highlight to it. I might grab the white. I might even grab I'll probably grab the white pencil and color in some loose highlights, similar to what I'm doing with this color here. This is the 407, like I mentioned. I don't think that I'm going to blend it out anymore. I'm pretty sure that this is finished drawing at this point for this tutorial. There's really no need to go any farther. The techniques are going to be the same. You have the tools at this point. All the colors that I'm using. If you want to go even darker with some of the shadows, you can bring in a black, though I really don't think that on blonde hair, you want that shiny glow to it. So you're going to be risking a lot bringing in a black pencil to get really dark shadows and stuff. Shadows are relative, and what I mean by that is darker shadows can be lighter colors when they're next to even lighter colors. So this dark brown here can almost look black on camera when it's next to white, or when it's next to a nice light yellowish blonde hair color. I'm gonna get some of those flyaways in there. I'm going to use the highlight color to kind of go across some of these shadows, and that will help create even more texture. And it will break up some of the monotony of the look of the hair. And I'm going to add a few of the flyaways here with the dark color, just kind of going real loose around it. I could probably use for sharpening on this pencil, but I'm going to ignore it. I think it's good enough, and just going to add, get this side a bit darker. This side over here is not as dark, so I'm just going to add a few of these lines here and then call it with this color. anywhere where the hair kind of looks like it's a bit too much one color, that's where I like to break it up. That's where I like to break it up with a nice line. Just to, there you go. Now, I am going to do just the smallest amount of blending. There's a few grainy spots that I see, and I just want to even them out. And this is going to take that dark brown color and it's going to blend it. It's going to start pulling it in different spots. So you want to be careful with it. You really just want to use the tip of the brush, kind of create, brush strokes and get those lines. This is going to help bring out those shadows a little bit more. So I'm barely touching the paper with my brush. I'm just, the slightest touch is all it takes. And there's just a few grainy spots that I want to get rid of and brush out some of those shadows. This is also going to help, brushing out some of those shadows is going to help using the highlight color right over top of the shadow. So this side of the head is pretty dark, so I'm not afraid to lose a little bit of texture just for the sake of adding value. This spot up here should be pretty dark as well. I'm going to brush out some of that texture just to get some shadow in there, a bit more shadow. And do just a bit here on this side to bring out some of those darker lines. This is going to rich that color and kind of let it settle a little bit more and bring out some of the details. That's pretty close. That's pretty close. I'm going to use a bit of the white for the final little touches of highlights. I'm going to get my pencil nice and sharp. I'm going to brush it off real quick, get rid of some of the dust. And it's also going to help it dry. That's another reason that I never use. Hopefully that wasn't too long. I keep forgetting I need to check my camera because it shuts off. I lost my train of thought. Anyways, yeah, I forget what I was saying. Stupid camera. Hopefully I'll have enough Patreon supporters soon so that I can buy a new camera so that I don't have to deal with that and you guys don't have to deal with that anymore. Oh, and now I remember what I was saying. That's one of the benefits of using smoother paper and why I can't tolerate using watercolor paper. I've used all kinds of different watercolor paper with colored pencil, and honestly I don't know how anybody has the patience for it, because when you blend out, it is so chunky and it absorbs so much of the color of the paint thinner that it just takes forever to dry, and it's just pointless. I just can't stand it. It drives me nuts. I don't have the patience for it when working with colored pencils. Like, that's one of the things that I love about colored pencils, is that they're quick, they're easy, you can just pick them up and start putting them down and coloring and having fun with them. But when you start using watercolor paper, you have to put down 5,000 layers of your pencil just to blend it out, and then when you do finally blend it out, you have to sit there and wait for it to dry. Otherwise you're going to ruin your paper. With the smooth paper, it doesn't absorb. It does not absorb the paint thinner, and so it just settles on top. It blends out the pencil very easily because it's so smooth, and that's all you got to do. So with this, what I'm doing is I'm laying it down here and then I'm pushing it up towards the tip, and this helps keep the tip sharp, and the line will be much more consistent and smooth. You don't want to add a lot of white because it's going to start desaturating all your colors. So you pick your spots and only add white in those tiny little spots. Those really bright highlights that you want to bring out. Like I don't even want to touch it anymore with the white because it's starting to desaturated a bit too much. So I think I'm going to call it with that last little bit of white. I think, maybe, no, that's good. I don't want to add any more unnecessary flyaways or anything like that. I think that's good. Maybe I'll add one or two, kind of coming like this. This side too. These little flyaways are gonna, they're gonna kind of bring the hair to life, add that last little bit. But I think that's good. I might have even went a little bit too far with the flyaways. But that's it. So hopefully you enjoyed this tutorial. Remember, next week I'm going to be doing brown hair. Same techniques, different hairstyle. And then also let me know here on Patreon if you want me to change the time of the live stream. I chose this time. This is pretty much the latest in the day before my fiance comes home. So if you want me to do it at a different time to help, I didn't have anybody in the chats today. So for that reason, I want to try to get it at a time where it accommodates as many people as possible. So let me know if there's a time. If you do follow along with this tutorial and you do color some blonde hair, there is a community section here on Patreon where you can post pictures and things like that. And if you do that, I'm happy to respond to them, give you some feedback on your drawing. And if you have any questions, you can leave them on the comments of this video, or you can post them on Patreon. It's up to you. Either way, I'll see them, and that's that. I will see you next week. Take care. Peace.